Welcome back, my anime heads. The moment the challenge ended, the tension that had gripped the arena finally dissolved. Outside the stadium, the afternoon sun painted the world gold. Yi Chuan walked casually with his hands in his pockets, while Jiang and war god Kaiyan followed behind. For the first time since the battle, everything felt peaceful. Then, Jiang suddenly slowed her steps. A faint blush crept onto her face. She glanced sideways at Yi Chuan. Thanks. Yi Chuan scratched the back of his head awkwardly. Huh? For what? Jiang lowered her gaze. For a moment, the proud young lady of the Nine Heavens Alliance looked almost shy. Then curiosity won over embarrassment. There's something I've been wondering about. Yi Chuan immediately felt danger approaching. Every man in existence knew that tone. Do you really like Su Ling Xuan? Silence. Dead silence. Even war god Kaiyan quietly moved several steps away. Yi Chuan blinked, then laughed. I have absolutely no interest in pigs. Jiang froze. Her eyes widened. Pigs? Are you saying she's fat? Yi Chuan nearly stumbled. That's not what I meant. But Jiang wasn't listening anymore. Her face became serious. Dangerously serious. Inside her head, Su Ling Xuan instantly transformed into a giant demonic pig with glowing red eyes and terrifying fangs. The monstrous creature radiated enough pressure to crush mountains. Meanwhile, Yi Chuan stood beneath it, sweating helplessly. Teacher Lu's aura alone was terrifying. If she actually fought seriously, we probably wouldn't even last 3 moves. Yet somehow, in Jiang's mind, the terrifying conclusion she reached wasn't about strength. It was about weight. So Yi Chuan doesn't like girls who are chubby. Looks like I need to start dieting. Yi Chuan had absolutely no idea what kind of catastrophic misunderstanding had just been born. And perhaps it was better that way. Just then, Yi Xiachuan, wait up. A loud voice exploded from behind. Everyone turned. An elderly man with long white hair hurried toward them, sweat pouring down his face. The instant he saw who it was, war god Kaiyan's expression changed. Jiang's eyes narrowed. Even the atmosphere became slightly strange. The old man forced out an awkward smile. Tilda haha. If it is Miss Jiang, and war god Kaiyan of the Nine Heavens Alliance Tilda. His laughter sounded more nervous than friendly. As though he had just realized he was standing in front of people he absolutely shouldn't offend. War god Kaiyan crossed his arms. What do you want? The old man swallowed. His gaze shifted toward Yi Chuan. And when his eyes landed on the young man, a trace of shock flashed across them. Because unlike everyone else, he could feel it. Something hidden beneath that ordinary appearance. Something terrifying. Something that didn't belong to a teenager. The old man forced another smile. But this time, the smile looked much less confident and much more cautious. The next conversation was about to reveal that Yi Chuan's victory today had attracted far more attention than anyone realized. The old man placed a hand on Yi Chuan's shoulder and asked, Did you really join the Nine Heavens Alliance? When did this happen? Yi Chuan looked at him and replied, Yeah, just a few days ago. The old man immediately grinned. I told you that you were a talent. Haha, actually, I've always thought highly of you. He smiled broadly while speaking. Then he took out a small chest and held it toward Yi Chuan. Here, I Xiaoming, am a man of my word. The chest remained open in his hands as he continued. Here is the spatial spirit weapon I promised you. Yi Chuan looked at the item inside the chest. A bracelet with blue and gold coloring rested against a red background. Streaming light bracer. War god Kaiyan looked at the bracelet and said, I say, old Zhao, how could someone as stingy as you bear to give away such a good item? Zhao Ming closed the chest while smiling. Yi Chuan is a talent I single-handedly cultivated, after all. Of course, I have to treat my own student well. Yi Chuan put the bracelet on his wrist. A flash of light appeared around the bracer. Moments later, a blue holographic interface appeared in front of him with the word inventory displayed at the top. Yi Chuan looked at the interface in surprise. Inside one of the inventory slots, 2 items appeared. Money pouch X2. Zhao Ming looked at the inventory interface and said, Yi Chuan, the space inside is quite large. Yi Chuan stood facing the holographic inventory, while Zhao Ming gestured toward it. You can put anything inside, and then take it out. Yi Chuan held one of the money pouches in his hand, while the inventory screen floated beside him. Zhao Ming watched from the side as the pouch moved toward the storage space. These 2 bags of money are also the 500,000 reward I promised you. The 2 money pouches were transferred into the bracelet. A glowing effect appeared above the bracer with the word deposit. You can store it in your bracelet at any time, and you can take it out at any time as well. After storing the money, Yi Chuan clasped his hands toward Zhao Ming and said, Thanks, Principal. Zhao Ming smiled at him and replied, Don't mention it. It's an honor for our Qing Cheng Academy that my student can join the Nine Heavens Alliance. He then turned toward Jiang Jingya and War God Kaiyan. Miss Jiang, War God Kaiyan, Yi Chuan will be in your care from now on. With his hands folded together, he added, I will also cultivate more incredible students for your Nine Heavens Alliance. Jiang Jingya stood with her hands on her hips and said, Thanks, Principal. We're in a hurry, so we'll be leaving first. As they departed, Zhao Ming stood behind them and waved his arm in the air. Yi Chuan, if you see the patriarch, remember to put in a good word for me. The scene shifted to the entrance of the Nine Heavens Alliance. Yi Chuan, there's about 3 weeks left before we go subjugate the Blazing Blade King. Jiang Jingya and War God Kaiyan stood near the doors while speaking with him. What are your plans? Yi Chuan touched his chin thoughtfully and replied, I want to take on some missions and earn some contribution points. War God Kaiyan burst into laughter and said, Good kid, to think you already have the drive to earn contribution points this quickly. With an excited grin on his face, he continued, I'll go with you. Let's take on some high-difficulty missions together. Yi Chuan immediately raised both hands in front of him. A bead of sweat appeared on his face as he replied, Uncle Kaiyan, I just want to do it alone. I want to level up by myself. Jiang Jingya stood with one hand on her hip, while War God Kaiyan extended a hand as he looked toward Yi Chuan. I was just about to say I'd go with him. Looks like this kid just wants to be a lone wolf. He then continued, But that's fine too. The trials and tribulations of completing missions alone are necessary experiences for a strong person. Jiang Jingya stepped closer and placed a hand on Yi Chuan's shoulder. All right then, you can move on your own, but you must pay attention to your safety. Yi Chuan looked at her and nodded. Yeah. The scene shifted to the mission center. Yi Chuan stood alone in front of a large mission terminal, with one hand resting against his chin as he examined the available missions. The screen displayed several tasks. 1-star mission, collect 10 alpine flowers. Contribution point reward, 400. 2-star mission, hunt a giant armored crocolion and bring back its complete corpse. Contribution point reward, 900. 3-star mission, destroy the mutated blood fiend cave. Requirement, form a party of 4-5 people. Members must be above the 8th stage of the Dengtang realm. Contribution point reward, 2,000. Yi Chuan reached out and pressed the 2-star mission. 2-star mission, hunt a giant armored crocolion and bring back its complete corpse. Contribution point reward, 900. A map appeared on the screen with a marked location. System notification. Yi Chuan has accepted the 2-star mission. Yi Chuan tapped his storage bracelet. Beep. A holographic panel appeared above it. Food X10. His eyes lit up immediately. This thing really is a good item. It's so convenient. After stocking up on supplies, Yi Chuan left the city under the cover of night. A crescent moon hung high in the sky as he followed the mission coordinates deeper into the wilderness. While walking through the dark forest, he couldn't help but chuckle. Giant armored crocolion, what a mouthful of a name. A faint purple aura swirled around him as excitement flashed across his face. Grinning from ear to ear, he cracked his knuckles and strode forward. Here I come, damn it. However, Yi Chuan wasn't the only one paying attention. Hidden among the trees, two figures watched him from afar. One of them immediately raised a communication device. Reporting to Lord Lei, that kid finally came out of the Nine Heavens Alliance. He stared at Yi Chuan's retreating figure and added, and he even left the city all by himself. Far away, seated upon a luxurious chair bathed in crimson light, a young man slowly curled his lips into a cold smile. You little brat, you've finally shown yourself after making me wait this long. Back in the forest, completely unaware of the scheme being woven around him, Yi Chuan leisurely walked along the trail. He let out a huge yawn. Yawn. His hands rested in his pockets as he wandered deeper into the woods. Suddenly, a strange sound echoed through the silent forest. HRRRGH, HRRRGH. Yi Chuan's eyes narrowed. He stopped walking and tilted his head. HRRRGH, HRRRGH. The noise sounded suspiciously familiar. Following the source, he soon arrived at a small clearing. There, a massive green-skinned monster was sprawled beneath a tree, sleeping soundly. Its thunderous snores shook the surrounding leaves. Yi Chuan blinked, then pointed at the creature. So it was you snoring. I'm actually feeling a little sleepy too. Yi Chuan stretched and let out another yawn. The giant monster continued snoring loudly, completely unaware of the danger standing beside it. HRRRGH, HRRRGH. Yi Chuan rubbed his eyes and looked at the beast's enormous body. Then, without the slightest bit of shame, he grinned. You don't mind sleeping together, do you? Before the monster could even wake up, Yi Chuan casually climbed onto its furry stomach and made himself comfortable. The giant creature's warm body felt surprisingly soft. Using one arm as a pillow, Yi Chuan closed his eyes. Within moments, one human and one monster were sleeping side by side beneath the moonlight. The forest fell silent, except for the synchronized sound of their snores. HRRRGH. HRRRGH. If anyone from the Nine Heavens Alliance had witnessed the scene, they would probably have fainted on the spot. The target of a 2-star mission. A terrifying monster feared by countless cultivators. And Yi Chuan was using it as a mattress. Completely at peace. Completely ridiculous. And somehow, completely natural for him. Two men remained hidden behind the bushes. Sweat ran down their faces as they stared ahead in silence. In front of them, the goblin giant continued sleeping while loud snores echoed through the forest. Yi Chuan was stretched out across the monster's body, asleep as well. One of the men frowned and looked toward the scene. What's going on with him? Did he fall asleep? He turned toward his companion. He's probably already discovered us. The other man clenched his hand and glared ahead. How is that possible? We've been extremely well hidden. Now is the perfect chance to strike. The first man continued staring at the sleeping monster. That goblin giant beside him is a monster equivalent to 5th-rank climbing pond realm. Looking at Yi Chuan lying beside the goblin giant, he came to a conclusion. He must have discovered us and deliberately hid next to that goblin giant for protection. His companion narrowed his eyes. Is that so? Looks like this kid really isn't simple. At that moment, the goblin giant's eyes suddenly opened. Yi Chuan's hand was pressed against its chest. The goblin giant immediately jolted awake in shock. Alia. Yi Chuan was still clinging to the monster's body. Tears had formed at the corners of his eyes, and his mouth hung open from being abruptly disturbed. He slowly opened his eyes, while remaining sprawled across the goblin giant's chest. Yi Chuan suddenly sprang to his feet. His eyes widened, and his mouth opened as he threw his arms up in alarm. Alia. The goblin giant recoiled at the same time. Under the moonlit sky, both of them jumped back from each other in shock. The goblin giant stared ahead with bulging eyes. Sweat ran down its face as it looked completely startled. Yi Chuan scratched the back of his head, while sweat dripped from his face. Are you looking for that spiked club? A picture of the spiked club appeared in the speech bubble. I was afraid it might stab me while I was sleeping, so I put it away. The goblin giant stood facing him. Its eyes glowed red as a dark and oppressive aura surrounded its enormous body. Yi Chuan looked up at it. It's just sleeping together. No need to get so angry, right? The goblin giant immediately charged forward with its claws, extended while Yi Chuan turned and ran. The two men hiding nearby watched the scene with shocked expressions. As expected, he's coming toward us. The goblin giant continued rushing forward behind Yi Chuan. Run! Yi Chuan sprinted through the forest while the goblin giant pursued him from behind. The two hidden men also turned and fled. As the three of them ran, Yi Chuan glanced toward the pair. Who might these two brothers in black be? The man with gray hair shouted while running. Get lost! You tried to use the Goblin King to kill us, and now you're pretending. Yi Chuan looked at him with a confused expression. What are you talking about? The bearded man's patience finally snapped. Why waste words with him? While all three of them were still running, he suddenly leapt into the air and launched a flying kick straight at Yi Chuan's back. Yi Chuan sensed the attack at the last second and twisted his body aside, narrowly avoiding the strike. Looking completely baffled, he shouted, I have no grudges with you. Why are you trying to harm me? Before the man could answer, a massive claw slammed down from above. The Goblin King had caught up. Its eyes glowed crimson as a terrifying aura erupted from its body. The monster pointed at Yi Chuan and roared in a language only monsters could understand. Ul Woi Oot, give me back my weapon. The furious roar echoed through the forest. Yi Chuan sighed helplessly. Are you really forcing me to make a move? A flash of golden light appeared in his hand. The strange blade he had hidden earlier materialized once more, its surface covered in swirling golden patterns that shimmered under the moonlight. Holding the weapon casually at his side, Yi Chuan looked up at the enraged Goblin King. We were just sleeping together. There's no need to go this far, right? The Goblin King's answer was immediate. It lunged forward with murderous intent. Yi Chuan's eyes sharpened. You big guy, your temper is too bad. Can't keep you around. The moment the Goblin King swung its claws, Yi Chuan vanished. The beast opened its mouth in surprise. A dark purple shadow suddenly exploded from behind Yi Chuan. Another shadow sweep LV3. The shadow stretched like a giant scythe and slashed across the Goblin King's body with overwhelming force. At the same time, crimson light flickered within Yi Chuan's eyes. Bloodshadow Butcher LV3. For the first time since entering the dungeon, the lazy and carefree young man revealed a glimpse of his true strength. The Goblin King froze. Its glowing eyes widened. For a brief moment, the towering monster stared at the purple shadow behind Yi Chuan as if it had seen something impossible. The shadow slowly rose. It wasn't merely an attack skill. It was a gigantic phantom figure that mirrored Yi Chuan's movements, radiating an ancient and terrifying aura. The Goblin King's murderous rage instantly vanished. Fear replaced it. Pure fear. The enormous creature that had dominated the forest moments ago suddenly dropped to its knees. Its body trembled violently. From its perspective, the human standing before it no longer looked human at all. He looked like a ruler from the depths of darkness itself. Yi Chuan tilted his head. The Goblin King lowered itself further, almost pressing its face against the ground. The giant monster was actually bowing. Yi Chuan blinked. The atmosphere became strangely awkward. A few seconds ago, the Goblin King had been trying to tear him apart. Now it looked like a frightened pet, waiting for punishment. From the ground, the creature carefully raised its head and peeked at him. Then its gaze shifted toward the butcher knife in Yi Chuan's hand. A look of terror flashed across its face. The monster seemed to have finally recognized the weapon. And that recognition nearly made its soul leave its body. Without warning, swish, the golden blade flashed. A dazzling line of light sliced through the air. The Goblin King's expression froze. Then a system notification appeared. System notification. Use the pig butcher knife to slaughter a goblin giant pig. For a moment, Yi Chuan stared at the message. Then he looked down at the corpse. Then back at the notification. A goblin giant pig. Apparently, the system had already made up its mind about what species this thing belonged to. Another blue panel appeared. Level increased to 4th rank Climbing Pond Realm. Strength, 145 up arrow. Agility, 145 up arrow. Spirit, 145 up arrow. Pig Slayer extra damage, increased to 610 up arrow. Yi Chuan nodded in satisfaction. A boss monster and a level up. Not a bad trade. Examining the gigantic corpse, he casually tapped the blade against its skin. Can this thing be skinned? Just as he was considering harvesting materials. Plop. Something small dropped behind him. Yi Chuan turned around. A female goblin stood there, clutching her chest nervously. Her face was pale with shock. The fruit she had been carrying had fallen from her hands. She stared at him as though she couldn't believe what she had just witnessed. Her lips trembled. You are. For the first time since entering the dungeon, someone looked at Yi Chuan not as prey, but as a being far more terrifying than the monsters themselves. The female goblin collapsed beside the gigantic corpse, clutching the severed head of the Goblin King. Her shoulders shook violently. Tears streamed down her face. Yi Chuan scratched his cheek awkwardly. Sorry, I had some grudges with your father. The goblin froze. Yi Chuan glanced at the corpse. Then at her. Are you his daughter? The female goblin immediately hugged the severed head tighter. Her crying intensified. The scene somehow became even more uncomfortable. For the first time in a long while, Yi Chuan felt like he was the villain. Then suddenly, the female goblin raised her head. Her emerald eyes burned with hatred. She pointed a trembling finger at Yi Chuan and screamed in the goblin tongue. OOM, OOKOOU. A red system translation appeared. You human dare kill my husband. Yi Chuan blinked. Husband. He looked at the corpse. Then at the goblin. Then back at the corpse. The Goblin King was old enough to be her grandfather. What kind of relationship is that supposed to be? The female goblin ignored him. Her expression twisted with grief and rage. Green energy erupted from beneath her feet. Ancient symbols spread across the ground like a giant magic circle. The forest trembled. Wind howled. Leaves exploded into the air. The female goblin screamed toward the heavens. I will curse You. Yi Chuan's eyes widened. Oh no. The green light instantly swallowed him whole. Boom. Countless streams of emerald energy wrapped around his body. The world twisted. Space folded. His feet left the ground. The sensation was like being stuffed into a washing machine and thrown off a cliff simultaneously. Wait. Yi Chuan flailed helplessly. I didn't even do anything. The curse completed. The green light vanished. Silence returned. A butcher knife spun through the air and landed somewhere nearby. Thud. A second later, Yi Chuan crashed from the sky. AHH. Boom. He landed directly on top of a mountain of bones. Skulls rolled everywhere. Broken ribs snapped beneath him. For several seconds, he simply sat there, stunned. Then he rubbed the back of his head and slowly looked around. The air was cold. A pale blue mist covered the landscape. Mountains of skeletons stretched endlessly into the distance. Some of the bones were larger than buildings. Others belonged to creatures he couldn't even identify. Yi Chuan stared blankly. Where the hell did this send me? He looked around again. The scenery became increasingly bizarre the longer he observed it. Ancient remains, demonic skulls, giant ribcage, blue ghost flames dancing between piles of bones. Yi Chuan swallowed, then asked the most important question. Is this even still inside the country? At that moment, a pale white flame suddenly ignited atop one of the distant bone mountains. FWOSH. The flame burned silently. Like a signal. Like a beacon. Or perhaps, like something had just awakened. And somewhere deep within the endless sea of bones, something opened its eyes. The white ghostly flame crackled softly in the distance. Yi Chuan stared at it for a moment before shrugging. There's only one path. He picked up his pig butcher knife and slung it over his shoulder. Let's see what's at the end. The sea of bones stretched endlessly beneath his feet. Each step echoed through the silent valley. Tap, tap, tap. The deeper he traveled, the stranger the surroundings became. Towering walls of black stone rose on both sides. Ancient runes glowed faintly beneath layers of dust. Massive skeletal remains were embedded into the cliffs, as if entire races had been buried alive here. And cutting straight through the center of the valley, a glowing river flowed. Not water, pure energy. Blue light drifted across its surface, like liquid starlight. Yi Chuan stopped. That's definitely not normal. At the center of the river stood a colossal metal gate. Ancient, silent, covered with seals and mysterious inscriptions. Even from this distance, he could feel an overwhelming pressure emanating from it. Like something behind that gate should never be released. The atmosphere became increasingly eerie. Yet the system remained silent. No warnings. No danger alerts. Nothing. Which somehow made everything worse. Yi Chuan narrowed his eyes. This place feels like a giant prison. As he spoke, a faint sound reached his ears. Splash. 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 His head snapped toward the glowing river. Something was moving beneath the surface. Something enormous. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, a gigantic armored body slowly drifted upward from the river. Yi Chuan froze. The creature looked like a lion, except every inch of its body was covered in silver scales. Its neck stretched like a crocodile's. Rows of armor-like plates covered its back. Its claws were larger than swords. And most terrifying of all, it was sleeping. The monster floated peacefully within the glowing river. SNN Nor. SNN Nor. The valley trembled slightly with each breath. Yi Chuan's face remained expressionless. Why is something this huge sleeping here? At that exact moment, ding! A blue notification window appeared before him. System notification. Mission target discovered. Giant armored crocodile lion. Yi Chuan stared at the sleeping behemoth. Then stared at the quest. Then looked back at the monster. The monster was at least 30 meters long. Its scales looked harder than fortress walls. Its breathing alone created waves powerful enough to crush ordinary cultivators. Yi Chuan suddenly realized something. So that female goblin just now was actually helping me find my mission target. He looked toward the sleeping giant armored crocodile lion and added, I'll have to make sure to thank her properly when I get out. Standing beside the massive beast, he examined its body. This guy is covered in thick armor. Once it wakes up, it'll be tough to deal with. After a moment of observation, he came to a decision. I need to take it out in one hit before it spots me. Yi Chuan jumped from a stone and moved closer to the monster's head while it continued sleeping. He looked at the creature's face and said, Sorry about this, buddy. In your next life, either be a lion or a crocodile. Don't go mixing things up blindly. It's a quick way to get yourself killed. He then reached behind himself. His hand searched for the pig butcher knife. A moment later, his expression changed. Where's my knife? He turned around and saw the pig butcher knife floating behind him. At the same time, a pair of glowing eyes appeared in the darkness behind him. Yi Chuan immediately became alert. I'd better fall back for now. Before he could move away, the pig butcher knife suddenly shot forward. Wrapped in green energy, it flew through the air at high speed. The blade struck directly into the forehead of the giant armored crocodile lion. A man and woman appeared at the entrance of the cave. The man grinned while standing with a bow in hand, and the woman stood beside him holding a staff. Finally found it. Text beside them identified them as Profession, Advanced Archer Wang Yuan. Profession, Intermediate Blesser Yu Zaiwan. The man then noticed someone else nearby. Looks like there's someone over there. At that moment, the giant armored crocodile lion suddenly lunged forward with its eyes glowing and mouth wide open. Water splashed around it as it charged. Yi Chuan spun around and ran, sweat visible on his face. Whoa! As the monster closed in, Yi Chuan raised a hand and looked toward it. Hey, wait a sec. It wasn't me. The next moment, Wang Yuan, Yu Zaiwan, and Yi Chuan landed on a large tree trunk. Wang Yuan crouched while Yu Zaiwan leaned forward slightly with her staff. Yi Chuan stood between them. Wang Yuan looked back at Yi Chuan and said, Brother, you don't mind leaving this giant armored crocodile lion to us, right? Yi Chuan looked at him and replied, Why should I? Wang Yuan turned his head slightly and examined him. Judging by your outfit and vibe, you probably aren't a combat-type profession, right? May I ask your name? Yi Chuan answered. Yi Chuan, I'm a pig butcher. Yu Zaiwan stared with widened eyes, while a bead of sweat appeared on Wang Yuan's face. A pig butcher. Wang Yuan raised a finger and laughed. Ha ha ha. He then stood with one hand on his waist, while Yu Zaiwan remained beside him holding her staff. To tell you the truth, the two of us are professional hunters. Hunting mutant beasts like this isn't something a life-type profession like you can handle. Yi Chuan looked at him and said, Why do you care? Whoever beats it claims it. Wang Yuan smirked and gave Yi Chuan a thumbs up, while the enormous face of the giant armored crocodile lion loomed behind them. Brother, are you kidding me? Do you have any idea how powerful this thing is? Behind them, the giant armored crocodile lion's face darkened. A vein bulged near its eye as it stared forward. The next moment, the beast opened its mouth and roared. Its eyes glowed brightly as the roar spread outward. Wang Yuan, Yu Zaiwan, and Yi Chuan stood facing it from below. Wang Yuan immediately leaped upward. Below him, the giant armored crocodile lion rushed forward with glowing eyes, while Yu Zaiwan and Yi Chuan were thrown backward in opposite directions. In midair, Wang Yuan drew several arrows onto his bowstring at once. A faint glow surrounded him as he aimed. The arrows shot forward through the air. They struck the giant armored crocodile lion's armored scales, producing visible impacts across its body. Wang Yuan turned toward Yi Chuan while the dark silhouette of the monster, with glowing eyes and jagged teeth, appeared behind him. Pig butcher, stay back, otherwise I won't be able to look out for you in a minute. Wang Yuan wore a confident expression as he looked ahead. Feeling pretty smug, huh? You think I can't do anything about you? A close-up showed his fingers moving toward another arrow as it shifted between his hand. Wang Yuan kept his bow drawn as several arrows hovered around him. Do you know how much effort it took us to find you? The giant armored crocodile lion charged toward him with its mouth open, its yellow eye visible as its massive body rushed forward. Wang Yuan's eye widened. Yu Xiaowan. Yu Xiaowan stood with her staff in hand, surrounded by blue light. Now's the time. A translucent notification appeared in front of her. Light Moon Blessing. Significantly enhances a teammate's next attack. She extended her hand forward as blue energy flowed around her. Blue light gathered around Wang Yuan. His eyes glowed white as arcs of electricity wrapped around his body, bow, and arrow. The lightning intensified and spread around him while he maintained his aim. The next moment, a bolt of blue energy shot forward from his position. The attack slammed into the giant armored crocodile lion's open mouth. A close-up showed the beast's eye widening in reaction as the blue energy continued surging into it. The blue energy exploded against the giant armored crocodile lion, sending debris and fragments outward. Wang Yuan stared ahead with a tense expression. A bead of sweat ran down his face. If it hadn't been blocked, that arrow would have taken its life instantly. Behind him, Pig Butcher stood with his eyes wide and his hands raised in front of his chest as faint sparks of electricity flickered around them. Impressive, impressive. Wang Yuan smirked slightly. Pig Butcher, now do you see how powerful us combat-type professions are? The giant armored crocodile lion roared. Blood could be seen running down its face near one eye as its mouth remained open. Its massive tail swept across the ground at high speed, passing over cracked stone. The tail continued rushing toward Wang Yuan and Pig Butcher. Both looked toward it as it closed in. Pig Butcher brought his palms together in front of his chest. A streak of light appeared between his hands. A notification appeared. Flash Blessing. Increases an ally's movement speed by 100% for 1 minute. Golden light spread around Pig Butcher while he kept his hands pressed together. In the next moment, Wang Yuan and Pig Butcher appeared beside the sweeping tail, their bodies blurred by movement as the attack passed through the space where they had been standing moments earlier. The giant armored crocodile lion swung one of its massive clawed arms toward the group. Wang Yuan and Pig Butcher moved away from the attack as motion blur surrounded them. Wang Yuan looked toward the priestess, sweat visible on his face. How long until the next Light Moon Blessing? The priestess gripped her staff tightly. Sweat ran down her face as she answered. Still 1 minute. From above, the giant armored crocodile lion stared at them with its glowing eyes. Wang Yuan and the priestess stood below it on the damaged ground. We have to hold out for that long. Without the Light Moon Blessing, it's almost impossible to damage it through its armor. The cracked ground suddenly shattered as a foot slammed into the surface, sending cracks spreading outward. Aiza. Xiaowan cried out as she lost her footing. Her body tilted backward while she clutched her staff, her hair and clothing flowing around her. Wang Yuan turned toward her immediately. Xiaowan. Xiaowan crouched on the ground, trembling and clutching one of her legs. Sweat ran down Wang Yuan's face as he looked back at her. Wang Yuan rushed to her side and placed a hand on her shoulder. Are you all right? Xiaowan grimaced while holding her injured leg. Just leave me alone, run. Above them, the giant armored crocodile lion's massive tail swept through the air toward their position. Xiaowan, run. Wang Yuan drew his bow and faced the incoming attack. There's something I've always wanted to tell you. Red energy surged around him as he stood with his bow raised. If I don't say it now, I'm afraid I'll never get the chance. An arrow shot forward and struck against the monster's green scales, producing a burst of blue sparks. Xia Wan wrapped her arms around Wang Yuan from behind. Her eyes were closed as blue sparks crackled around them. You don't have to say it, I already know. Xia Wan continued holding onto Wang Yuan from behind with her eyes closed. Idiot, if you keep this up. At worst, we'll die together. A voice suddenly interrupted them. You two, hold on a second. Both of them looked forward. Standing in front of them was Lin Yi. His face was expressionless as he faced away from them. Xia Wan and Wang Yuan stared at him with wide eyes. Pig-like masks had appeared on both of their faces. This plot is way too cliché. I can't watch this anymore. A powerful attack slammed into a golden barrier surrounding Wang Yuan and Xia Wan. Cracks spread across the glowing shield as the impact struck its surface. A blue notification window appeared in front of Lin Yi. Golden Bell shield has expired. It will refresh in 12 hours. Golden fragments floated through the air around him, while he remained standing calmly. Wang Yuan stared at him with sweat running down his face. Why, you're okay. Lin Yi glanced to the side. Why wouldn't I be? What? The armored crocodile lion opened its mouth wide and roared. Its eyes glowed as its mane flared around its head. It's coming again. The monster rushed toward Lin Yi. He stood among the broken stone while looking at the bracelet on his wrist and touching it with his other hand. Good thing I still have this. Lin Yi held the enormous spiked club in front of him and said, It's a bit big, but still much lighter than my dad's butcher knife. A blue screen appeared before him. System notification. Slaughter God Edge has been activated. New weapon detected. Pig Slaughter Club mid-tier spirit weapon. Each kill grants 0.2, attribute bonus. Wang Yuan stood beside him with a tense expression and sweat running down his face as he said, Thank you for saving us, but as a life profession, facing a monster of this level is very dangerous. Don't fight it head-on. It's better if we retreat first. Lin Yi was already in the air above the armored crocodile lion, holding the giant club over his head as he descended toward it. Don't underestimate. He swung the weapon down with his mouth open. A life profession. The Pig Slaughter Club crashed into the armored crocodile lion. Fragments flew through the air as the impact connected. Lin Yi remained on the weapon as it continued driving into the monster. The attack struck the armored crocodile lion's head directly. Blood sprayed from the point of impact while debris scattered around them. Wang Yuan and the blonde woman stared ahead with widened eyes and beads of sweat on their faces. What, he actually? The blonde woman looked toward Lin Yi and said, Wait, could he be that pig butcher Yi Chuan who won the college entrance tournament? The armored crocodile lion's eye was shut tightly, and tears streamed from it as its face twisted from the blow. The armored crocodile lion crouched low on the ground with tears still streaming from its eyes. Its mouth was wide open as it roared while clawing at the stone floor. Cracks and debris surrounded it as it prepared to flee. Wang Yuan stared ahead with sweat on his face and shouted, Don't let it escape, now's the chance. The blonde woman stood behind him, surrounded by blue energy. Lunar light blessing. Wang Yuan rushed forward with his bow in hand, while blue energy swirled around him. Don't even think about running. He released an arrow. The glowing projectile shot forward and struck the armored crocodile lion's scaled body in a burst of blue light. Lin Yi looked on with wide eyes and a bead of sweat on his face. Nice shot, it almost got away. He stood on top of the armored crocodile lion's body, amid scattered rubble, and said, Now we don't even need to skin it. The blonde woman and Wang Yuan stood behind the monster's body and looked toward him. Excuse me, are you the pig butcher Yi Chuan who won the tournament yesterday? Lin Yi turned his head slightly and replied, Oh, you know me. The blonde woman looked at him, while a news article was displayed behind her featuring his picture, and a headline about a life profession pig butcher winning the college entrance tournament. Yesterday's match was broadcast live. And today, Your name is all over the headlines. Yi Chuan scratched the back of his head and said, As they say, fame attracts trouble. This isn't necessarily a good thing. Wang Yuan and Zaya Wan stood in front of him and bowed. Thank you for saving OUR lives. The two remained bent forward, while Yi Chuan stood on top of the armored crocodile lion's corpse looking at them. Wang Yuan lowered his head with a bead of sweat on his face and said, Earlier I failed to recognize your greatness. I hope you can forgive me. From today on, you are our benefactor. We'll go through fire and water for you without hesitation. Yi Chuan remained standing on the monster's body, with his hands resting on his knees, and replied, It's nothing, but you're not planning to split this crocodile corpse with me, are you? Wang Yuan immediately looked alarmed and shouted, Benefactor, forget the corpse. Even my life is yours whenever you want. Zaya Wan is the person I treasure the most. If she were gone. Zaya Wan looked at him with tears in her eyes and said, Brother Wang Yuan, please don't do something so foolish again, okay? The background turned bright with sparkling lights around them. Wang Yuan smiled and leaned close to Zaya Wan while placing a gloved hand against her chest. Sister Zaya Wan, no matter what happens, I will never abandon you. Yi Chuan stood nearby looking at the two of them. His eyes were hidden by a shadow as he thought, I should have never saved them. A close view showed a bracelet on his wrist as a finger touched it. Blue light burst out from the bracelet. Circular waves of energy expanded around Yi Chuan while he looked toward the glowing artifact. Yi Chuan looked at the glowing bracelet on his wrist. A holographic screen floated above it displaying the words, High-grade giant armored crocodile lion corpse ×1. This thing is way too convenient. The surroundings suddenly changed. Large stone doors appeared and began opening, revealing a bright red light between them. Yi Chuan's eyes widened slightly as he looked ahead. The massive doors continued to part. Red light poured through the opening and illuminated the cavern. Yi Chuan stood beneath the beam while Wang Yuan and Zaya Wan remained farther behind him near the monster's corpse. Yi Chuan thought, This is a secret realm. Wang Yuan and Zaya Wan stared forward with wide eyes. Sweat was visible on both of their faces. Could it be? Yi Chuan turned his head and looked back over his shoulder. Red light reflected across the scene, while Wang Yuan and Zaya Wan stood together behind him, both staring toward the opened passage. Yi Chuan looked toward Wang Yuan. What is a secret realm? Wang Yuan and Zaya Wan faced the towering red passage, while red light reflected across their bodies. A secret realm is a passage left behind by the celestial race that leads to another dimension. An image appeared showing a glowing gateway surrounded by structures. Above it, a dark vortex and a blue cavern-like space were visible. There are about 40 secret realms discovered across the world so far. But most of them have been occupied by powerful families or academies. Wang Yuan stared ahead with sweat on his face. However, there are still many undiscovered secret realms in this world. Wang Yuan and Zaya Wan stood behind Yi Chuan under the red light. The glowing realm wristband in your hand was likely obtained from a secret realm. Yi Chuan looked at the bracelet on his wrist. So that means there must be a lot of valuable items inside, right? Wang Yuan looked toward him, while Zaya Wan stood beside him. High rewards come with high risks. Places with good treasures are usually very dangerous. Yi Chuan stood in front of the glowing passage and turned toward the two of them. By the way, what is the celestial race? Wang Yuan forced a smile. Sweat remained visible on his face. You're so strong, yet how do you not even know this? Zaya Wan held onto Wang Yuan's arm, while both looked toward Yi Chuan. You forgot, Yi Chuan is a life profession. In school, teachers wouldn't teach this kind of knowledge to life professions. Zaya Wan looked at Yi Chuan with sweat visible on her face. After all, a life profession would never spend their life exploring secret realms. Wang Yuan scratched the back of his head and looked toward Yi Chuan. Sorry, Brother Yichuan. A bead of sweat remained on his face. You should know that in our world, besides the human race, there are many other races. Behind him, silhouettes of different figures appeared, such as the demon race, goblin race, beast race, and so on. An image of a winged figure with long hair, a halo, and large white wings appeared amid radiant light. And the celestial race is recorded in history as the strongest race. However, for some unknown reason, they have now disappeared. Yichuan looked ahead. Damn, I see everything as pigheads. It's hard to distinguish different races. Wang Yuan and Zaya Wan stood facing the glowing passage while Yichuan stood near it. Today we really got lucky. We originally just wanted to hunt a giant armored crocodile lion for some money. But if we rashly enter and run into danger... A close-up showed Wang Yuan's eye widening as sweat ran down his face. But if we rashly enter and run into danger... Yichuan stepped forward into the glowing passage. What are you afraid of? The light of the passage surrounded his body as he walked ahead. Take a gamble, turn a bicycle into a motorcycle. Purple streaks of light moved across the sky above the treetops. 3 figures moved through the area. The tall man walked behind the other 2 with his hands in his pockets, while the 2 men in front looked ahead with sweat visible on their faces. One of them stopped beside the body of a giant green creature and pointed toward it in shock. The last place that kid appeared is right here. The tall man looked at the corpse. A one-hit kill, huh? He continued, looking at the creature. That kid's strength seems to have improved again. We absolutely cannot let him continue growing. The younger man hurried toward the corpse and grabbed the blade lodged in its body. Boss, that kid's blade has been found. He pulled on the weapon with both hands while straining his body. Why can't I pull it out? The tall man stepped forward. His face remained expressionless as the younger man looked up at him in surprise. Move aside, you 2 useless fools. Yes. The tall man grabbed the handle of the pig butcher blade and pulled. The weapon shifted as it came free from the creature's body. The 2 men behind him stared with surprised expressions while sweat ran down their faces. The tall man examined the blade while gripping it with both hands. This kid's weapon is no ordinary item. If I'm not mistaken, this pig butcher blade is of a higher grade than mine. The pig butcher blade continued sliding out of the creature's body until the blade was completely exposed. The tall man looked at the pig butcher blade in his hand as blue energy swirled around the weapon. What exactly happened that made him abandon his weapon? The 2 men looked toward him with sweat on their faces. Boss, do you think it's possible that kid was eaten by the goblin giant? Or after killing it, he got captured by other goblins? The tall man rested a hand against his chin. That's possible. A green foot stepped onto the ground nearby. A goblin woman appeared from between the trees. She had pointed ears, messy orange hair, and wore tattered clothing. Her eyes were wide as she stared toward the humans. She raised a finger and shouted, Exzat, Ur-Uj. My husband is dead, and you humans still dare to covet his corpse. The tall man faced her as blue lightning-like energy spread around his body and gathered around the short blade in his hand. What nonsense are you babbling? A large green magic array appeared on the ground beneath the goblin woman. Green light rose from the array and surrounded the area. The tall man stood inside the glowing light with the weapon in his hand, while the 2 men behind him looked upward in surprise. His expression changed as he looked at the magic array. Not good. It's a teleportation array. This thing can use magic. The goblin woman's eyes glowed green as she opened her mouth and roared. Nneni, mmetty, turn into poop inside a crocodile's belly. Green light poured down from above. The tall man stood at the center of the glowing magic array with the short blade in his hand, while the other 2 men crouched nearby. After the surroundings changed, the tall man looked around. Maybe that kid was teleported here by that female goblin. That would explain everything. His eyes widened as he looked ahead. This is the entrance to a secret realm. His face twisted into a huge grin. Ha ha ha, what an opportunity. We actually discovered a new secret realms. Now I can get promoted within the Thunderlion Alliance. The other two men immediately clasped their hands together and spoke. Lord Lei, congratulations. The scene shifted to a red, swirling portal. The three men stood before it as one of them looked toward the portal and said, Looks like that kid really did come here. He must have defeated the guardian beast of the secret realm and already entered inside. The two men stared ahead with serious expressions. Boss, that kid managed to kill the guardian beast alone. He's not simple. What if he ambushes us inside? The tall man appeared in shadow with glowing eyes and a grin on his face. What's there to fear? He's just a pig butcher without his blade now. Inside a long corridor lined with burning wall torches, Su Lingxuan and Yi Chuan walked ahead while Wang Yuyan followed behind them with a hand covering her mouth. Su Lingxuan looked toward Wang Yuyan and said, Don't worry, as long as you follow behind me, nothing will happen. Wang Yuyan turned her head and looked forward. Yi Chuan stood in the corridor with one hand in his pocket while facing them. Far ahead in the corridor, a figure stood surrounded by mist. The figure wore dark armor with a crown-like helmet and held a large sword. Wang Yuyan gripped her staff and looked ahead. Up ahead, it looks like there's someone. Su Lingxuan immediately stepped forward and spread an arm in front of Wang Yuyan. A bead of sweat appeared on his face as he shouted, Who's there ahead? The figure became visible. A skeletal armored warrior stood within purple mist. One eye glowed while a massive sword rested in its hand. Tattered armor and ragged cloth covered its body as it faced the group. Wang Yuyan's eyes widened, and beads of sweat appeared on her face as she shouted, Erwa. Standing behind Su Lingxuan, she stared at the skeletal warrior and said, There are actually undead knights in this place. Sweat ran down Su Lingxuan's face. With a tense expression, he looked toward the undead knight and said, Brother Yi Chuan, protect Xiaowan, I'll handle this undead knight. Yi Chuan stood behind him with one hand in his pocket. The undead knight tightened its skeletal grip around the hilt of its massive sword. Green light surrounded the undead knight as it raised the enormous blade. Su Lingxuan stood below with his bow in hand, facing the towering figure. Don't even think about passing. Su Lingxuan leaped into the air and drew his bow. Too slow. An arrow shot forward. The arrow streaked through the air. It struck the undead knight directly in the head. Done. The undead knight's head separated from its body and flew backward. An arrow remained lodged through the skull while the head spun away from the armored body. The green glow inside the undead knight's body suddenly brightened. Green energy surged through the armored figure. The undead knight lunged forward. Its massive weapon swept toward Su Lingxuan as he stared up with widened eyes and sweat running down his face. Su Lingxuan raised his bow and blocked the incoming strike. Such tremendous power. The undead knight's headless body remained standing. Green energy swirled around it while the severed head and body moved toward each other. The skull reattached itself to the armored body. Sweat rolled down Su Lingxuan's face as he looked at the undead knight. This is a bit troublesome. This guy isn't an ordinary undead knight. It might be the true guardian of this secret realm. Without taking his eyes off the undead knight, Su Lingxuan called out, Xiaowan, buff me. Wang Yuyan looked toward him with sweat on her face. Lunar light blessing. She raised her staff as purple light descended around Su Lingxuan. Purple energy surrounded his body while he held his bow ready. The undead knight charged forward through the purple and green light. Su Lingxuan rushed forward under the effects of the blessing and unleashed a series of attacks. Purple energy streaked across the undead knight's body as pieces of armor and bone shattered and flew apart. After the attack, Su Lingxuan wiped the sweat from his forehead. It's finally done, let's keep moving. Yang Chen looked toward the scattered remains. Wait, it's not over yet. Green light suddenly gathered among the broken pieces. The fragments moved together as the undead knight reassembled itself. I am the undying knight. The restored undead knight stood before them with green light shining from its eyes and mouth. Yang Chen stepped forward, carrying the giant spiked club on his shoulder. I don't care whether you die or not, just don't block my way. He swung the club downward, repeatedly toward the undead knight. Su Lingxuan and Wang Yuyan stared ahead with widened eyes and sweat on their faces. This time it should. The shattered pieces of the undead knight scattered across the ground. Green light continued to surround the fragments as they floated upward once again. Yang Chen looked at the reassembling pieces. Again. Wang Yuyan looked at the others with sweat running down her face. We should retreat first. She continued speaking with a worried expression. This undying knight is likely the true guardian left behind by the celestial race. If we can't break the magic cast on it, it will revive endlessly. It will keep fighting intruders until exhaustion. Our deaths would only be a matter of time. Su Lingxuan looked toward Yang Chen. We should get out of here. He continued. Even the gatekeeper is this strong. There must be something even more terrifying inside. Yi Chuan touched his chin and looked at the undying knight. It'd be great if I could have an immortal pet. Wang Yuyan and Su Lingxuan stared in shock, sweat visible on their faces. Yi Chuan, and at a time like this you're still joking. Yi Chuan placed his hand on the undying knight's skull. Since you can't die no matter how many times, it must be pretty painful, right? The undying knight's eyes widened as sweat appeared on its face. None of your damn business. Let me go. Yi Chuan leaned closer with a smile. How about you become my pet? I'll take you out of here. The undying knight looked at him. Stop joking. I was granted immortality, but it's also a curse. I can never leave this place. Yi Chuan smiled. Trust me. A purple glow appeared near his hand as he grabbed the undying knight's head. Azza. Yi Chuan pressed his other hand toward the bracelet on his wrist as bright light burst out around his hands. Stop. The light connected the bracelet and the undying knight while the armored figure stood in front of him. A stream of purple and blue energy surged from Yi Chuan's bracelet. The undying knight appeared inside a glowing rectangular space. Where is this? Let me out. The blue light around Yi Chuan's bracelet faded. Wang Yuyan and Su Lingxuan stared at him with shocked expressions. You can even do that. Yi Chuan looked at them and smiled. Let's go, it's settled. The three of them walked forward through a long corridor toward a bright opening ahead. They arrived inside a vast hall filled with mist and light. Towering structures and massive archways stood around them. Yi Chuan, Su Lingxuan, and Wang Yuyan looked ahead. A gigantic palace stood before them. Two enormous winged statues holding swords stood on both sides of the entrance. It's magnificent. There must be something valuable inside that palace. The group looked toward one of the statues. Is that statue the legendary celestial race? Yi Chuan stared at the statue wearing black robes. Black robes. I remember Liu Exing said he saw black-robed figures in my house. Could it be? My parents were taken away by the celestial race. Wang Yuyan looked toward the statue. That's right. Inside the bracelet, the undying knight raised his fist and shouted. I warn you, do not enter. Thanks for watching my anime heads. See you on the next chapter.